Subscribe for more historical analysis. The development of American Ranger and Commando units during the Second World War began with a recognition that the United States Army did not yet possess specialized light infantry trained for rapid assaults, infiltration, or targeted raids. European battles in the early years of the war showed the value of small, flexible units, capable of moving independently, striking quickly, and exploiting narrow openings in enemy lines. The British Commandos had already demonstrated the usefulness of such forces. Their raids on coastal targets in northern Europe in 1940 and 1941 provided a model for similar American formations. Senior American officers concluded that the United States would need comparable units for the operations that were expected in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. The first American Rangers were organized in the United Kingdom in the summer of 19. Volunteers from different divisions were selected after physical tests, weapons evaluations, and field exercises. Training emphasized endurance, navigation, night movement, small unit tactics, and the ability to operate without direct support from larger formations. British instructors contributed to the early training program. The curriculum included cliff climbing, amphibious landings, demolition procedures, and coordinated attacks in rough terrain. These methods shaped the early identity of the Rangers. They were designed to function as assault troops capable of striking at specific objectives, opening paths for larger units, and disrupting enemy defenses. The newly formed 1st Ranger Battalion received its first operational assignment in North Africa. During Operation Torch in late 1942, Ranger elements supported landings and conducted limited raids against coastal defenses. The operations in North Africa provided practical experience. They showed that small, well-trained units could strike quickly and create tactical openings. They also revealed the importance of detailed reconnaissance, reliable communication, and the need for flexibility in planning. The experience gained in North Africa influenced later Ranger deployment in the Mediterranean. The next phase occurred during the Sicily campaign in 1943. American Rangers took part in assaults on coastal positions, seized key routes, and advanced ahead of larger formations to secure terrain that would be critical for the main force. These actions supported the broader movement of Allied armies across the island. The operations also demonstrated the limitations of light infantry units when facing strong defensive positions with heavy weapons. Ranger losses in certain engagements indicated the need for careful coordination with artillery and armor. Nevertheless, their performance reinforced the idea that elite units were essential for complex operations in difficult landscapes. Parallel to the Rangers, other American elite formations emerged. One of the most significant was the Marine Raiders. These units were created in the early months of the Pacific War under the leadership of senior Marine Corps officers who believed that the United States needed a specialized force capable of conducting rapid amphibious strikes. The Raiders focused on jungle warfare, long-range patrols, and small unit actions in isolated environments. Training included navigation through dense terrain, river crossings, and extended marches in tropical conditions. Their operations in the Solomon Islands provided valuable lessons for future campaigns. The Raiders conducted raids, reconnaissance missions, and targeted strikes against Japanese positions, often operating with limited supplies and minimal support. Another key formation was Merrill's Marauders, officially designated the 5307th Composite Unit. This unit was organized for operations in Burma. Its purpose was to penetrate deep behind Japanese lines, disrupt supply routes, and support the larger Allied strategy in the China-Burmandia theater. Training took place in harsh climates and emphasized endurance, movement through difficult terrain, and the ability to sustain operations far from regular supply lines. The unit conducted a series of long-range missions through mountainous and jungle terrain. These actions required careful planning, logistical improvisation, and coordination with air supply. The Marauders became known for their ability to maintain operational pressure under extreme conditions. Meanwhile, in Europe, additional Ranger battalions were created to support planned operations across the continent. Preparations for the cross-channel invasion required specialized units capable of seizing fortified points, neutralizing coastal guns, and opening lanes for infantry and armor. These requirements shaped the training of the 2nd and 5th Ranger Battalions. Emphasis was placed on amphibious landings, obstacle removal, movement under fire, and coordination with naval and air support. The units were expected to take part in the initial wave of the invasion, making their preparation critical to the success of the broader Allied plan. The operators of the Office of Strategic Services formed another category of American commando-style units. OSS operational groups were trained for raids, sabotage, and cooperation with resistance movements in occupied Europe. Their missions differed from conventional Ranger tasks. They focused on organizing local fighters, conducting reconnaissance behind enemy lines, and disrupting transportation networks. Training included foreign weapons, demolition techniques, communication systems, and survival skills. Although smaller in size, OSS groups played an important role in supporting Allied advances by weakening enemy control in occupied areas. By 1944, American elite units had become fully integrated into the planning of major operations. Each formation contributed a specific capability. Rangers executed direct assaults on hardened positions. Marine Raiders operated in jungle environments. Merrill's Marauders carried out long-range penetrations in remote regions. OSS teams supported resistance cells and conducted targeted sabotage. The presence of these specialized units gave Allied commanders greater flexibility. They could assign tasks to the forces best equipped for each situation rather than relying solely on conventional infantry. The increasing use of elite units reflected a broader trend in modern warfare. Large-scale operations required precise actions at critical points. Army divisions and corps could maneuver across wide fronts, but small specialized forces were needed to secure narrow objectives, eliminate key defenses, or disrupt enemy planning. American Rangers and Commandos demonstrated that small, well-trained units could influence the outcome of larger engagements by acting at the right moment in the right place. As preparations for major European operations intensified in early 1990s, American Ranger units received missions that required precise coordination with naval and airborne forces. The Normandy invasion demanded troops capable of seizing fortified positions before they could inflict heavy losses on incoming infantry. The 2nd and 5th Ranger battalions were selected for these tasks. Their responsibilities included the neutralization of the capture of high ground overlooking landing zones, and the elimination of artillery that threatened the beaches. One of the most notable assignments involved the cliffs of Pointe du Hoc. Intelligence indicated that German coastal guns positioned on the heights could strike both Omaha and Utah beaches. The mission required scaling vertical cliffs under fire, moving across uneven terrain, and securing the battery positions before the main force arrived. Training for this operation included rope climbing, cliff assault techniques, and movement across fortified terrain. The Rangers studied aerial photographs and models to understand the enemy defenses. Although many of the guns had been removed before the attack, the Rangers still secured the positions and located the guns hidden inland. They disabled them using explosives, preventing potential use against Allied forces. On Omaha Beach, other Ranger companies faced heavy fire from machine guns, artillery, and mortar. The landing conditions were difficult. The terrain favored the defenders, and initial waves suffered significant disruption. Ranger companies reorganized under fire, moved inland, and cleared pathways for following units. Their actions contributed to establishing a viable lodgment on the beach, allowing larger formations to advance. The performance of the Rangers at Omaha and Pointe du Hoc reinforced the concept that specialized units could achieve objectives that required rapid movement and focused assaults against fortified positions. In the Mediterranean, Ranger units participated in continued operations after the Sicily campaign. During the Italian mainland landings, Rangers again served as assault troops, tasked with capturing critical terrain before the arrival of main forces. However, the battles in Italy revealed the inherent risks faced by elite light infantry. At Cisterna in early 1944, Ranger battalions encountered strong German resistance. Their movement through narrow terrain exposed them to counterattacks from well-equipped enemy units. The resulting engagement led to heavy Ranger losses. The event demonstrated that elite units, while highly capable, were not suited for prolonged engagements against larger, organized forces without adequate support. The lessons from Cisterna influenced later decisions on the deployment of elite units in Europe. In the Pacific, elite formations continued to play significant roles. The Marine Raiders participated in operations across the Solomon Islands. Their missions included reconnaissance, raids on isolated outposts, and patrols across dense jungle environments. These actions supported broader campaigns by limiting Japanese mobility and gathering information on enemy positions. As the war progressed, the Marine Corps reassessed the role of the Raiders. Larger amphibious operations required unified command structures and standardized units. Consequently, the Raiders were reorganized into regular Marine regiments, but the skills they developed influenced later training and tactics. Merrill's Marauders remained engaged in operations in Burma. Their missions emphasized deep penetration, movement across challenging terrain, and reliance on air supply. The unit advanced through mountains, jungles, and river valleys, often facing heat, disease, and limited medical support. Their actions disrupted Japanese supply routes and assisted Allied forces advancing toward the interior of Burma. The long-range operations conducted by the Marauders required coordination with aircraft for supply drops, communication networks for navigation, and cooperation with local forces. The unit's performance demonstrated the effectiveness of specialized troops in environments where traditional formations faced significant movement challenges. Additional American units operated in the Pacific with roles similar to Commandos. The Alamo Scouts, for example, conducted reconnaissance missions in New Guinea and the Philippines. These teams gathered information on enemy positions, identified suitable landing zones, and supported larger operations with detailed intelligence. Their small size allowed them to move quietly and avoid detection. They operated independently for extended periods and influenced the planning of major operations by providing accurate assessments of terrain and enemy dispositions. The Office of Strategic Services expanded its activities during this period. OSS operational groups continued working with resistance forces across Europe. They provided training in weapons, demolition, and communications. They coordinated sabotage actions that disrupted German supply lines and delayed troop movements. They also supported Allied offensives by guiding aircraft to drop zones, organizing escape routes for downed airmen, and collecting intelligence. The integration of OSS missions into operational planning illustrated the growing importance of irregular warfare within the Allied strategy. American elite units were involved in campaigns across multiple theaters. Their contributions varied according to the environment. Rangers acted as shock troops in amphibious assaults. Marine raiders and jungle units conducted reconnaissance and raids. Merrill's marauders executed deep penetration missions. OSS teams weakened enemy control behind front lines. This diversity allowed Allied commanders to apply specialized capabilities to specific operational problems. The use of elite units also revealed the limitations of conventional forces in certain situations. Large divisions moved slowly, required substantial logistical support, and struggled in confined terrain. Elite units provided flexibility. They could move quickly, strike isolated objectives, and gather information essential for planning. This flexibility, however, depended on careful selection, intensive training, and deliberate deployment. Commanders recognized that elite units could influence the success of operations when used at decisive moments, but their misuse could lead to unnecessary losses. By the late stages of 1944, the role of elite units expanded further. As Allied forces approached Germany, specialized teams conducted reconnaissance near river crossings, cleared obstacles for advancing units, and assisted airborne operations. The experience gained in previous campaigns allowed these units to adapt to new environments. Training and operational doctrine continued to evolve, shaping the future of American light infantry and special operations forces. By late 1944, American elite units had gained extensive experience across multiple theaters, and their operational roles continued to expand as the Allied advance intensified. In Western Europe, the Rangers and other specialized teams supported the rapid movement of larger formations by clearing defensive positions, conducting reconnaissance, and securing key infrastructure. Their actions were based on the principle that speed and precision were essential during the final phase of the war. When German forces attempted to delay Allied progress through a combination of fortified towns, river barriers, and counterattacks, one major responsibility of elite units during this period involved reconnaissance for river crossings. As Allied armies approached the Rhine, intelligence on enemy positions, water depth, currents, and crossing points became critical. Ranger elements scouted riverbanks, identified suitable landing zones, and located gaps in German defenses. These missions required quiet movement, careful observation, and communication under limited visibility. Information gathered by the Rangers helped planners determine the timing and route of major crossings, which played a central role in opening the path to Western Germany. Airborne operations also required support from elite ground units. Paratroopers often landed in dispersed groups, with limited information on enemy locations. Rangers and similar teams conducted Pathfinder-style tasks on the ground. They confirmed the presence of enemy positions, marked routes for reinforcements, and neutralized isolated threats. This coordination ensured that airborne troops could consolidate positions more rapidly. The ability of elite units to operate independently, adjust to unexpected conditions, and maintain communication within complex environments made them valuable during these combined operations. In the Pacific Theater, specialized American units continued to conduct independent missions that supported broader strategic goals. The recapture of the Philippines required accurate information on Japanese defenses, terrain features, and coastal conditions. Alamo scouts played an essential role during this phase. They conducted reconnaissance missions across Luzon, Leyte, and other islands. Their reports guided amphibious landings and ground movements. Their ability to move through dense terrain, avoid detection, and provide consistent updates gave American commanders the situational awareness needed for complex island operations. Merrill's marauders, after suffering extensive casualties and operational strain, were reorganized into what became the 75th Infantry Regiment. This transformation reflected the continued need for long-range penetration units capable of operating in remote areas. Although the original marauders were withdrawn due to attrition, their operational model influenced future planning for jungle warfare and special operations. Their ability to sustain operations under extreme conditions became a reference point for later American units. Marine raiders underwent similar organizational changes. Their structure was absorbed into standard Marine divisions, but their experience influenced the formation of specialized companies and reconnaissance elements within larger units. These components continued to support landings, conduct patrols, and perform targeted strikes against isolated Japanese positions. The integration of radar tactics into conventional formations demonstrated how the lessons of elite units shaped the operational culture of the Marine Corps. In Europe, the ongoing collapse of German defenses created new requirements for specialized missions. Rangers, scouts, and small commando-style teams were used to secure bridges before they could be destroyed by retreating German forces. These actions required rapid movement toward potential demolition sites, often ahead of the main Allied thrust. The ability to seize intact bridges allowed armored and infantry divisions to maintain momentum, limiting the opportunity for organized German resistance. The capture of several bridgeheads during this period demonstrated the importance of speed and precision, characteristics central to elite unit operations. Another area where elite forces played a key role was in clearing fortified towns. German defenders often used urban terrain to delay Allied progress. Ranger companies conducted targeted assaults to remove machine gun positions, observation posts, and command centers. These actions allowed larger units to advance without suffering heavy losses. The Rangers employed systematic methods, identifying entry points, isolating defensive nodes, and coordinating movements across narrow streets and damaged structures. Their training in small unit tactics made them suitable for these operations. OSS operational groups continued to support Allied advances by working with resistance movements in France, the Low Countries, and parts of Germany. Their missions involved gathering intelligence, organizing sabotage actions, and coordinating with advancing Allied units. They identified German troop concentrations, located supply depots, and disrupted transportation networks. These activities reduced the ability of German forces to conduct organized withdrawals, further accelerating Allied progress. OSS teams also assisted in guiding units through unfamiliar terrain and identifying safe routes that bypassed German strength. The increasing use of elite units highlighted a consistent pattern across all theaters. Specialized troops allowed commanders to manage uncertainty. In large operations, unexpected obstacles such as destroyed bridges, concealed defenses, or terrain difficulties could delay advances. Elite forces reduced these delays by handling tasks that required speed, adaptability, and independent judgment. Their missions bridged the gap between reconnaissance and main force engagement. They also ensured that commanders received accurate information, enabling informed decisions in rapidly changing environments. By early 1990s, the structure of American elite units became more coordinated. Training programs were revised based on operational experience. Physical conditioning, weapons proficiency, and navigation remained central components. But new modules were added for riverine operations, demolition, and urban combat. Knowledge gained from the Pacific, Mediterranean, and European theaters shaped a more unified doctrine for American special operations. This consolidation reflected the growing recognition that elite units were not temporary wartime innovations, but tools that would continue to be valuable in future conflicts. The combination of Rangers, Marine Raiders, jungle penetration units, and OSS teams provided the United States military with a diversified set of capabilities. Each formation served a distinct purpose. Their effective deployment relied on understanding the relationship between operational objectives and the unique skills of specialized troops. As the war approached its conclusion, the integration of these units into overall Allied strategy demonstrated the practical value of elite forces in large scale. Modern warfare. As the final phase of the war approached, American elite units operated across multiple environments that required precise coordination, rapid movement, and independent decision. Their missions continued to expand because large conventional formations encountered a range of obstacles that slowed movement or limited visibility. Ranger companies, reconnaissance teams, and commando-style units were used to identify these obstacles and eliminate key defensive points. Their actions ensured that the main force could maintain momentum during the rapid advance into Germany and across the Pacific Islands. In Western Europe, elite units increasingly supported operations in urban terrain. German forces used towns and cities as defensive nodes. They established machine gun posts, sniper positions, and fortified buildings to delay Allied progress. Rangers and other small units conducted targeted clearances of these positions. They moved through narrow streets, used concealment, and neutralized isolated defenders. Their training in close-quarters movement allowed them to operate more effectively than larger formations in confined environments. These operations reduced casualties among main force units and accelerated the pace of the advance. Another significant responsibility for elite units involved securing industrial areas and transportation hubs. As the Allied armies advanced deeper into Germany, capturing factories, power stations, and rail facilities became essential to prevent their destruction. Ranger companies were often assigned to seize these facilities ahead of retreating German forces. These actions required speed and coordination because German demolition teams attempted to destroy infrastructure before withdrawing. The ability of elite units to reach these sites quickly prevented further damage to the regions that Allied planners intended to use for logistical purposes. In addition to ground operations, elite units supported the identification of chemical or weapons research facilities. Intelligence reports indicated that German laboratories and storage sites might contain materials of strategic value. Ranger patrols and OSS teams conducted inspections, secured documents, and reported findings to higher headquarters. Their small size allowed them to enter areas quickly and avoid detection. This role reflected the expanding intelligence requirements of late-war operations and demonstrated the adaptability of elite units to new tasks. Across the Pacific, operations continued in dense terrain where conventional movement was limited. In the Philippines, American forces sought to regain control of large islands that contained mountains, forests, and dispersed Japanese positions. Alamo Scouts conducted reconnaissance missions that identified enemy concentrations, supply routes, and defensive structures. Their reports guided the movement of infantry and armor. They also located prisoner-of-war camps and assisted in planning rescue missions. Their ability to move without detection remained a consistent feature of their operations throughout the campaign. Merrill's Marauders had been reorganized, but their operational model influenced new units conducting long-range patrols in the Philippines and Borneo. These patrols required careful coordination with air units for supply drops. They also depended on navigation skills, because terrain and weather limited visibility. Long-range penetration teams provided early warning of Japanese troop movements and allowed American commanders to plan operations with greater accuracy. The integration of these teams into the broader structure of the Pacific Campaign demonstrated the importance of specialized reconnaissance in large-scale island operations. Marine reconnaissance units also expanded their activities. They conducted amphibious reconnaissance of potential landing zones, examined reef structures, and assessed the depth and shape of beaches. These tasks were essential for planning assault operations, because unsuitable landing sites could result in operational delays or increased casualties. Reconnaissance teams gathered information on currents, tides, and coastal defenses. Their findings shaped the timing and structure of amphibious assaults. These missions required quiet movement and the ability to operate close to enemy positions without detection. As the war moved toward its conclusion, elite units in both theaters were increasingly used to manage uncertainty during rapid advances. The speed of Allied movement created gaps in situational awareness. Ranger companies and small patrols filled these gaps by identifying threats, securing choke points, and confirming the condition of bridges and roads. Their ability to adapt to unexpected conditions allowed commanders to maintain continuous pressure on retreating enemy forces. These missions became essential as German and Japanese units attempted to reorganize or establish new defensive lines. Elite units were also used to manage contacts with civilians in newly captured areas. In Europe, OSS teams collected information from local populations regarding German movements, supply caches, and minefields. In the Pacific, small reconnaissance teams assessed the presence of isolated enemy groups and determined whether areas were safe for the movement of larger formations. These interactions provided essential information for planning operations and managing the stability of newly secured regions. Although these missions were not offensive actions, they required the same level of discipline and precision that characterized elite unit operations. Late-war operations also highlighted the logistical demands placed on elite units. Their missions often required travel through areas with limited supply access. Commanders ensured that elite units received priority for essential equipment, including radios, navigation tools, and specialized weapons. Air resupply became an important component of long-range missions. Accurate delivery of supplies required coordination between ground teams and air crews. The ability to sustain operations under these conditions demonstrated the maturity of American logistics during the final phase of the war. By early 19, the deployment of elite units reflected the evolution of American military doctrine. Their missions extended beyond direct assaults to include reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, infrastructure, security, and coordination with local forces. Their training continued to adapt to new environments, and their operational value became widely recognized within the Allied command structure. These developments positioned elite units not only as tools for immediate wartime tasks, but also as the foundation for future special operations forces. By the final months of the war, American elite units played a central role in the closing operations that marked the collapse of German and Japanese resistance. Their missions reflected the cumulative experience gained across multiple theaters since the early years of the conflict. These units had matured into well-coordinated formations capable of conducting reconnaissance, targeted assaults, intelligence gathering, and rapid exploitation of tactical openings. Their presence ensured that larger formations could maintain momentum during the final advances into Germany and across the Pacific Islands. In Western Europe, the rapid movement of Allied armies required constant updates on terrain conditions, enemy positions, and the status of critical infrastructure. Ranger companies and reconnaissance teams were assigned to secure road junctions, railway stations, and industrial zones. These tasks allowed engineers and logistics units to establish supply routes quickly. The ability of elite units to move ahead of main forces prevented German demolition teams from destroying facilities. Essential to sustaining the offensive, the preservation of transportation networks contributed directly to the speed of Allied advances. Urban combat operations intensified as Allied forces approached major German cities. Rangers supported infantry divisions by clearing isolated resistance pockets, identifying defensive lines, and neutralizing positions that hindered movement. Their small size and specialized training allowed them to navigate dense neighborhoods with minimal exposure. These operations required precise coordination because German defenders used attics, basements, and reinforced structures to delay progress. Ranger teams identified these points of resistance and eliminated them systematically. This approach reduced casualties among larger formations and facilitated steady advances through urban terrain. As German forces withdrew, elite units also played a role in securing bridges and crossings before they could be destroyed. These missions required speed and surprise. Ranger patrols approached potential demolition sites under concealment, assessed the presence of explosives, and disabled charges when possible. Their success preserved bridges over rivers that were essential for the movement of armored divisions. The ability to maintain intact crossings significantly shortened the time needed for offensive operations and prevented disruptions in supply lines. In the Pacific, elite units continued to conduct reconnaissance and targeted actions during the liberation of the Philippines. The terrain on islands such as Luzon and Mindanao required careful planning. Dense forests, mountains, and dispersed enemy positions limited the visibility and movement of conventional units. Alamo scouts provided detailed reports on Japanese concentrations, supply caches, and defensive structures. Their reconnaissance guided infantry movements and reduced the risk of encountering strong defensive positions unexpectedly. They also supported rescue operations by identifying prisoner-of-war camps and coordinating extraction efforts. Marine reconnaissance teams performed tasks similar to those of their counterparts in Europe. They assessed potential landing zones, documented beach conditions, and identified obstacles that could hinder amphibious operations. Their findings shaped the planning of assaults and informed the allocation of forces. These missions played an essential role in ensuring that amphibious landings were conducted with maximum efficiency. The information collected by these teams helped prevent unnecessary delays or casualties. Elite units also supported the identification and capture of enemy documents, maps, and communication codes. OSS teams frequently worked alongside Ranger patrols to secure intelligence materials during the rapid advance through German territory. These documents provided insight into German operational plans, troop movements, and logistical networks. The acquisition of such information contributed to the coordination of Allied operations during the final months of the war. In some cases, elite units secured research sites and laboratories that contained materials relevant to post-war planning. As German and Japanese resistance weakened, elite units were used increasingly to locate isolated enemy groups and assess the safety of newly secured areas. These missions required careful movement through terrain that might contain mines, booby traps, or concealed defenders. Elite patrols identified these threats and marked safe routes for the main force. Their role in managing battlefield hazards helped maintain the pace of the advance and ensured that logistical operations could proceed without interruption. By early 19, the integration of elite units into the broader Allied strategy was complete. Their training programs reflected lessons gained from operations in Europe, the Mediterranean, and the Pacific. Instruction emphasized navigation, small unit coordination, reconnaissance, demolition, and communication. These skills provided the foundation for what would become the post-war structure of American Special Operations Forces. The operational experiences of Rangers, Raiders, Marauders, and OSS teams informed later doctrine and shaped the formation of long-term units such as the modern Ranger Regiment and Special Forces components within the Army and Marine Corps. As the war ended, the significance of elite units became clear. They demonstrated the value of flexible, highly trained formations capable of completing tasks that conventional units struggled to execute. Their ability to move independently, adapt to changing conditions, and strike at critical points made them essential components of Allied success. While conventional forces formed the bulk of offensive power, elite units enabled operations to proceed with greater precision and speed. Their contributions reduced delays, improved intelligence, and ensured that large-scale operations remained coordinated and effective. The development of American elite units during the Second World War represented a shift in military thinking. The experience gained during the conflict showed that modern warfare required more than massed formations. It required specialized capabilities, rapid decision-making, and versatile units capable of addressing unexpected challenges. The performance of American Rangers and Commandos demonstrated that these requirements could be met through rigorous training, disciplined organization, and deliberate operational planning. The legacy of these units continued beyond the war. Their doctrine, tactics, and organizational models shaped post-war American military planning. They influenced the structure of modern special operations, guided the creation of new units, and established standards for reconnaissance and targeted assault missions. The ability of elite troops to operate across diverse environments, from urban areas to mountains and forests, became a defining feature of the American approach to specialized warfare. Their contributions during the Second World War provided a foundation for the continued development of elite capabilities in the decades that followed.